Open source software is widely used both as independent applications and as components in non-open source applications. Many independent software vendors, value-added resellers, and hardware vendors use open source frameworks, modules, and libraries inside their proprietary, for-profit products and services. From the customer's perspective, the ability to use open source technology under standard commercial terms and support is valuable. Customers are willing to pay for the legal protection, commercial-grade QA, and professional support, training, consulting that are typical of commercial software, while also receiving the benefits of fine-grained control and lack of lock-in that come with open source. Introduction. Unlike proprietary off-the-shelf software, which comes with restrictive copyright licenses, open-source software can be given away for no charge. This means that its creators cannot require each user to pay a license fee to fund development. Instead, a number of alternative models for funding its development have emerged. Software can be developed as a consulting project for one or more customers. The customers pay to direct the developer's efforts, to have bugs prioritized and fixed or features added. Companies or independent consultants can also charge for training, installation, technical support, or customization of the software. Another approach to funding is to provide the software freely, but sell licenses to proprietary add-ons such as data libraries. For instance, an open-source CAD program may require parts libraries which are sold on a subscription or flat-fee basis. Open-source software can also promote the sale of specialized hardware that it interoperates with. Some example cases are the Asterisk telephony software developed by a manufacturer of PC telephony hardware Digium, or the robot operating system robotics platform by Willow Garage and Stanford AI Labs. Many open-source software projects have begun as research projects within universities, as personal projects of students or professors, or as tools to aid scientific research. The influence of universities and research institutions on open source shows in the number of projects named after their host institutions, such as BSD Unix, CMU Common Lisp, or the NCSA HTTPD, which evolved into Apache. Companies may employ developers to work on open-source projects that are useful to the company's infrastructure. In this case, it is developed not as a product to be sold but as a sort of shared public utility, a local bug fix or solution to a software problem, written by a developer either at a company's request or to make his/her own job easier. Can be released as an open-source contribution without costing the company anything. A larger project such as the Linux kernel may have contributors from dozens of companies which use and depend upon it, as well as hobbyist and research developers. Also, there exist stipends to support the development of open-source software like Google's Summer of Code founded 2005. A new funding approach for open-source projects is crowdfunding, organized over web platforms like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or Bounty Source. Challenges. Open-source software can be sold and used in general commercially. Also, commercial open-source applications are a part of the software industry for some time. Despite that, except for Red Hat and BA Software, no other pure open-source company has gone public on the major stock markets. While commercialization or funding of open-source software projects is possible, it is considered challenging, since several open-source licenses stipulate that authors of derivative works must distribute them under an open-source license. ISVs and VARs have to develop new legal and technical mechanisms to foster their commercial goals, as many traditional mechanisms are not directly applicable anymore. Traditional business wisdom suggests that a company's methods, assets, and intellectual properties should remain concealed from market competitors as long as possible to maximize the profitable commercialization time of a new product. Open-source software development minimizes the effectiveness of this tactic. Development of the product is usually performed in view of the public. allowing competing projects or clones to incorporate new features or improvements as soon as the public code repository is updated, as permitted by most open source licenses. Also in the computer hardware domain, a hardware producer who provides free and open software drivers reveals the knowledge about hardware implementation details to competitors, who might use this knowledge to catch up. Therefore, there is considerable debate about whether vendors can make a sustainable business from an open source strategy. In terms of a traditional software company, this is probably the wrong question to ask. Looking at the landscape of open source applications, many of the larger ones are sponsored by system companies such as IBM, who may not have an objective of software license revenues. Other software companies, such as Oracle and Google, have sponsored or delivered significant open source code bases. These firms' motivation tends to be more strategic, in the sense that they are trying to change the rules of a marketplace and reduce the influence of vendors such as Microsoft. Smaller vendors doing open source work may be less concerned with immediate revenue growth than developing a large and loyal community, which may be the basis of a corporate valuation at merger time. Approaches. A variety of open-source compatible business approaches have gained prominence in recent years. Notable examples include dual licensing, software as a service, not charging for the software but for services, freemium, donation-based funding, and crowdfunding. There are several different types of business models for making profit using open-source software or funding the creation. Below are existing and legal commercial business approaches in context of open-source software and open-source licenses. The acceptance of these approaches varies. Some of these approaches are recommended, others are accepted, while still others are considered controversial or even unethical by the open-source community. The underlying objective of these business models is to harness the size and international scope of the open-source community for a sustainable commercial venture. The vast majority of commercial open-source companies experience a conversion ratio well below 1%. So low-cost and highly scalable marketing and sales functions are key to these firms' profitability. Dual licensing offers the software under an open-source license but also under separate proprietary license terms. The proprietary version can be sold to finance the continued development of the free open-source version. Customers can be attracted to a no-cost and open-source edition, then be part of an upsell to a commercial enterprise edition. Further, customers will learn of open-source software in a company's portfolio and offerings but generate business in other proprietary products and solutions, including commercial technical support contracts and services. A popular example is Oracle's MySQL database, which is dual licensed under a commercial proprietary license, as also under the GPL v2. Another example is the SleepyCat license. Flask developer Armin Runaka stated that the AGPL v3 was a terrible success as vehicle for dual commercial licensing, and noted that MongoDB, RethinkDB, OpenIP, SugarCram as well as WURFL utilizing the license for this purpose. Selling professional services. The financial return of costs on open-source software can also come from selling services, such as training, technical support, or consulting, rather than the software itself. Another possibility is offering open-source software in source code form only, while providing executable binaries to paying customers only, offering the commercial service of compiling and packaging of the software. Also, providing goods like physical installation media can be a commercial service. Open-source companies using this business model successfully are, for instance, Red Hat and IBM. A more specialized example is that of Revolution Analytics. Selling of branded merchandise. Some open-source organizations such as the Mozilla Foundation and the Wikimedia Foundation sell branded merchandise, articles like t-shirts and coffee mugs. This can be also seen as an additional service provided to the user community. selling of certificates and trademark use and other financing approaches innovated by Moodle, an open-source learning management system and community platform. The business model revolves around a network of commercial partners who are certificated and therefore authorized to use the Moodle name and logo, and in turn provide a proportion of revenue to the Moodle Trust, which in turn funds core development. Selling software as a service. Selling subscriptions for online accounts and server access to customers is a way of making profit based on open source software. Also, combining desktop software with a service, called software plus services. Providing cloud computing services or software as a service without the release of the open source software itself, neither in binary nor in source form, conforms with most open source licenses. Because of its lack of software freedoms, Richard Stallman calls SaaS inherently bad, while acknowledging its legality. The FSF called the server-side use case without release of the source code the ASP loophole in the GPL v2 and encouraged therefore the use of the Affero General Public License, which plugged this hole in 2002. In 2007, the FSF contemplated including the special provision of a GPL v1 into GPL v3 but ultimately decided to keep the licenses separate. Partnership with funding organizations. Other financial situations include partnerships with other companies, governments, universities, companies, and non-governmental organizations may develop internally or hire a contractor for custom in-house modifications, then release that code under an open-source license. Some organizations support the development of open-source software by grants or stipends, like Google's Summer of Code initiative founded in 2005. Voluntary donations also. There were experiments by independent developers to fund development of open-source software donation driven directly by the users, e.g., with the Illumination software creator in 2012. Sourceforge, for example, allows users to donate money to the projects it hosts that opt to accept donations. Internet micropayment systems like PayPal, FlatTR, and Bitcoin help this approach. Larger donation campaigns also exist. In 2004, the Mozilla Foundation carried out a fundraising campaign to support the launch of the Firefox 1.0 web browser. It placed a two-page ad in the December 16 edition of the New York Times listing the names of the thousands who had donated. Bounty-driven development. The users of a particular software artifact may come together and pool money into an open-source bounty for the implementation of a desired feature or functionality. Offering bounties as funding has existed for some time. For instance, Bounty Source is a web platform which has offered this funding model for open-source software since 2003. Another bounty source is companies or foundations that set up bounty programs for implemented features or bug fixes in open-source software relevant to them. For instance, Mozilla has been paying and funding freelance open-source programmers for security bug hunting and fixing since 2004. Pre-order, crowdfunding, reverse bounty model. A newer funding opportunity for open-source software projects is crowdfunding, which shares similarities with the pre-order or prior numeration business model, as well as the reverse bounty model. It is typically organized over web platforms like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or Bounty Source. An example is a successfully funded Indiegogo campaign of Australian programmer Timothy Arsery, who offered for $2,500 to implement in 2 weeks an OpenGL 4.3 extension for the Mesa library. Arsery delivered the OpenGL extension code, which got merged into Mesa, and continued later his Mesa work with successive crowdfunding campaigns. Advertising supported software in order to commercialize FOSS. Many companies have moved towards an economic model of advertising-supported software. For instance, the open-source application AdBlock Plus gets paid by Google for letting whitelisted acceptable ads bypassing the browser ad remover. As another example is Sourceforge, an open-source project service provider, has the revenue model of advertising banner sales on their website. In 2006, Sourceforge reported quarterly takings of $6.5 million and $23 million in 2009. Selling of optional proprietary extensions. Some companies sell proprietary but optional extensions, modules, plugins or add-ons to an open-source software product. This can be a license-conform approach with many open-source licenses if done technically sufficiently carefully. For instance, mixing proprietary code and open-source licensed code in statically linked libraries or compiling all source code together in a software product might violate open-source licenses, while keeping them separated by interfaces and dynamic link libraries might often adhere to license conform. This approach is a variant of the freemium business model. The proprietary software may be intended to let customers get more value out of their data, infrastructure, or platform, e.g., operate their infrastructure, platform more effectively and efficiently, manage it better, or secure it better. Examples include the IBM proprietary Linux software, where IBM contributes to the Linux open-source ecosystem, but it builds and delivers database software, middleware, and other software that runs on top of the open-source core. Other examples of proprietary products built on open-source software include Red Hat Enterprise Linux and CloudHeras Apache Hadoop-based software. Some companies appear to reinvest a portion of their financial profits from the sale of proprietary software back into the open-source infrastructure. Some companies, such as Digium, sell proprietary but optional digital electronics hardware controlled by an open-source software product. Selling of required proprietary parts of a software product. A variant of the approach above is the keeping of required data content of a software product proprietary while making the software's source code open source. While this approach is completely legitimate and compatible with most open-source licenses, customers have to buy the content to have a complete and working software product. Restrictive licenses can then be applied on the content, which prevents the redistribution or reselling of the complete software product. An example is Cotton Action Creative Artful video game Steel Storm, where the engine is licensed as GPL v2 while the artwork is CC by NC/SAR 3.0 licensed. Doing so conforms with the FSF and Richard Stallman, who stated that for art or entertainment the software freedoms are not required or important. The similar product bundling of an open-source software product with a proprietary hardware part is called TiVoization and legal with most open-source licenses except GPL v3, which explicitly prohibits this use case. Relicensing under a proprietary license. If a software product uses only own software and open-source software under a permissive free software license, a company can relicense the resulting software product under a proprietary license and sell the product without the source code or software freedoms. For instance, Apple Inc. is an avid user of this approach by using source code and software from open-source projects. For example, the BSD Unix operating system kernel was used in Apple's Mac PCs that were sold as proprietary products. Obfuscation of source code, an approach to allow commercialization under some open-source licenses while still protecting crucial business secrets, intellectual property and technical know-how, is obfuscation of source code. This approach was used in several cases, for instance by NVIDIA in their open-source graphic card device drivers. This practice is used to get the open-source friendly propaganda without bearing the inconveniences. There has been debate in the free software, open-source community on whether it is illegal to skirt copyleft software licenses by releasing source code in obfuscated form. such as in cases in which the author is less willing to make the source code available. The general consensus was that while unethical, it was not considered a violation. The Free Software Foundation, on the other hand, is clearly against this practice. The new general public license since version 2 has defined source code as the preferred form of the work for making modifications to it. This is intended to prevent the release of obfuscated source code. Delayed open sourcing. Some companies provide the latest version available only to paying customers. A vendor forks a non-copyleft software project, then adds closed-source additions to it and sells the resulting software. After a fixed time period, the patches are released back upstream under the same license as the rest of the code base. This business model is called version lagging or time delaying. An extreme variant of time-delayed open sourcing is a business practice popularized by id Software and 3D Realms, which released several software products under a free software license after a long proprietary commercialization time period and the return of investment was achieved. The motivation of companies following this practice of releasing the source code when a software reaches the commercial end of life is to prevent that their software becomes unsupported, abandonware, or even get lost due to digital obsolescence. Many examples from the video game domain are in the list of commercial video games with later released source code. Popular non-game software examples are the Netscape Communicator, which was open-sourced in 1998, and Sun Microsystems' Office suite, StareOffice, which was released in October 2000 at its commercial end of life. Both releases formed the basis of important open-source projects, namely the Mozilla Firefox and OpenOffice.org/LibreOffice. This approach works only with own source code or with software under specific open-source licenses, namely the permissive licenses, as there is no copyleft license available, which allows the opening of source code in a defined delayed time window after distributing or selling of a software product.